I want to introduce our keynote speaker, Bruce Potter. Bruce has been doing cybersecurity for about 30 years, which in his own words makes him kind of old. Bruce is currently the CEO and founder of Turngate, a SaaS audit log company, and he's been a CISO at a number of companies prior to doing that. Middle management? Bruce is also the founder of the Shmoo Group and assisted with running ShmooCon for 20 years up in DC. So he's done a bunch of other things, DARPA research, led red teams, broken networks in good and bad ways, he claims. And you'll have to ask him about an internet service in remote parts of Alaska in the mid-90s. Really thrilled to have Bruce come down here to RVAsec. If you guys can help welcome Bruce to the stage.
Hey, my slides are still there. Whoa, that's hot, sorry. It's pretty early for me to get really crazy with a mic, so I'll try to be polite. As Jake said, my name is Bruce Potter, so we got that much correct. I appreciate that. It's always interesting to get up on stage and talk about something that they give you no rubric or any ideas of what to talk about. Like, it's Keynote, just say your shit. And I'm like, okay, so I'm gonna say my shit for the next hour. If you disagree with my shit, you should call me on it. I very much welcome feedback on the fly. You can throw chairs, insults, whatever you want. It's totally cool. Jake's on the hook for any damage the chairs cause, so that's totally cool too. Anyway, yeah, this will get funnier, just wait. I've been doing this a long time. I got into cybersecurity by accident 30 years ago when I was up in Alaska. I grew up in upstate New York. This is my bio, by the way. I'm going to tell a story, and it's going to introduce me, because most of you don't know who I am, and that's totally cool. Grew up in upstate New York, fourth generation lumberman, which was a thing. I spent my summers working in a lumber yard, the kind of lumber yard where we go like cut the trees down and turn it into lumber and ship it out by like the boxcar. I knew early on that was not what I wanted to do. If you spent time in a lumber yard, it's pretty bifurcating as to whether you enjoy it or whether you prefer to be alive. So I chose life, and I ended up at a full ride to Cornell, University of Rochester. I could have gone anywhere I wanted, and instead I went to a state school in Fairbanks, Alaska. So that was one of the early decisions in my life. You can judge how it went. I did meet my beautiful wife and had kids. That was by far the best part of that. Actually, in Alaska, it's a beautiful state. It's an amazing place to live. The reason I mention this is that in my entire professional career, I have made mistakes. I've watched others make mistakes. And I think one of the most important things that we can do as we grow is to learn from those mistakes. And oftentimes, the mistakes that we make are obvious in hindsight, right? And so, in hindsight, me going to Alaska and choosing that route was not a mistake at all. For those that have ever been up there, it is the most amazing. It's the Wild West still, right? With no offense intended to anyone in Wyoming or Montana, but that shit's pretty urban compared to rural Alaska. I ended up working at the largest internet provider in the state, and we brought internet to the Aleutians, to the North Slope, to Southeast Alaska in the mid-90s, where there was no internet. And I gotta say, it was transformative for those communities to do that. We think of, right now, the internet's ubiquitous, right? It's in our pockets, it's in the air, it's all around us. 30 years ago, barely a generation, it really didn't exist. And the people that we worked for, my wife and I both worked for Internet Alaska, had the vision to take like cheap internet to the middle of goddamn nowhere, $20 a month, let people have it dial-up internet. Now, it was slow, right? Like, just to be super clear, at some point in the provisioning of all this, we had 20,000 dial-up customers on the ass end of 2,000 modems, a little contentious, on the ass end of 2 T1s. And we ran MRTG for our network graphs, and if it wasn't just a green bar, that meant it was broken, right? Like, it was literally full all the time. One of the issues was there was a limited number of terrestrial options left as far as buying dedicated circuits. And so the circuits that we had initially went from Anchorage, one went to Seattle, and one went to Minneapolis for some shit to get out to the internet. Those loops alone cost 20 grand a month just for that, not even the IP services, right? So you're paying 20 bucks a month for a piece of 4-wire copper to go down to the lower 48. One day, we got the idea, there's a bunch of ISPs up there, and internet gaming was becoming a thing, right? Games and porn drove the early internet. For those youngins that don't realize that, that's like God's honest truth. And people in Anchorage would play video games with each other, and you would have a neighbor in one house playing a game with a neighbor in the other, and the packet would take a 6,000-mile trip to go from one to the next. Because the other ISP, like, their pop was in Chicago. And so we ended up standing up a meet me room in Anchorage, and all the ISPs got together and built like a local meetup there, and so all the ISPs could exchange traffic. The other thing that we did that was pretty interesting, this has nothing to do with the talk, by the way. I am on slide 1, I know, they gave me an hour, there's a lot of filler, I gotta stretch. This is just gonna be, but this is actually kind of a fascinating story, I think. In the mid-90s, we went to the telco and said, like, hey, the internet's clearly a thing, the DSL stuff, or the dial-up stuff is slow, and people don't want to buy T1s because they're too expensive. Because T1s have to have like a physical port on a line card, it takes up space, it's expensive to provision the circuit and whatever. And we went to the telco and we said, hey, why don't you stand up DSL circuits? They're cheap, they're easy, we'll provide the IP service, you provide the loop, everything will be great. And the phone company says, get bent. Internet's a fad, that's not a thing. If you want dedicated service, buy a T1. I'm like, okay, cool, thanks for that. So we were reasonably intelligent and scrappy, and what we started doing is buying alarm circuits with no load coils. And what that is telco code for just give me a goddamn piece of copper from this place to this place. Nothing in between that gets in the way of signaling, just a big long piece of copper, which is what DSL wants. And so we started selling residential and business DSL service under the cover of darkness without the telco knowing. And so we would just buy these circuits. Somebody would be like, I want DSL, like, cool. We'd order an alarm circuit. You put a DSL modem on both sides. You turn up the rate until you got errors, and you backed it down because we can't engineer the line. We can't control it because we don't want to tell the telco what we're doing. And so it'd be like, hey, it's a 512K circuit. They're like, cool. We're like, how does 80 bucks a month sound? They're like, cool. And they would just pay it, you know? We didn't have a pricing model. We didn't have any reliability guarantees. It was just like, you'll get DSL mostly. And so the telco calls up one day and is like, are you an alarm company now? We're like, why do you ask? Like, what a funny question. That's strange. And eventually we fessed up and we told them what we were doing. And they freaked out. They're like, yeah, that's not okay. So they went to the Alaska Public Utility Commission and they petitioned to limit the signaling rate on alarm circuits to 40 kilobits to basically crush the DSL service that we were providing. So then our CEO and the CEO of the telco got together and eventually came to the realization that telco's like, you know what, we could sell the loops and you guys could provide the IP backhaul and it would be a great service. Like, genius, like that's a great idea. But yeah, the team that I was with, we built the first DSL network in Alaska without the telco knowing. So thank you, yeah, it was actually pretty cool. The reason I tell that story is that, you know, like cybersecurity, those situations are oftentimes where there's no clear rubric, there's no clear plan of what you should do, right? When you're in Alaska bringing internet to remote parts of the state, you're just making shit up as you go. And there were plenty of mistakes we made. We broke the internet a number of times, at least in the state of Alaska. Not the global internet, thank God. I did watch the global internet break once, but that was a different story. And, you know, the one thing that I really valued about my time up there was how tight that feedback loop was, about how much we learned, we experimented, we grew, we tried things out. It really was the Wild West when it came to technology. So anyway, now I'll get on with my talk. So when I was putting this talk together, I was trying to put a title on it. Yeah, and in summary, I got the peanut gallery right up front, so that's super useful. I'm trying to title a talk, and I was looking for a hook. Like, how do I want to talk about all these stories? Because I'm just going to tell stories. And the first thing was like, hindsight's 20/20. Well, that's a fantastically stupid cliche, right? Like, yeah, you can always learn from the past and whatever. It sounds like a Harvard Business Review article. And then I thought about like, skate to where the puck is going to be. Also sounds like a Harvard Business Review article. No offense to anybody that reads HBR. but come on, it really does feel like every HBR ever. And first of all, skate to where the puck's gonna be. Who said it? Who actually said it? It was not Wayne Gretzky, it was Wayne Gretzky's dad. So this is one of those quotes that's been attributed to a person for years. Wayne Gretzky, he's great because he skates to where the puck's gonna be. It turns out it's actually his dad telling his son, skate to where the puck's gonna be, Wayne. Jesus, what is wrong with you, right? Don't be these kids, right? By the way, this is a live shot of RSA. So as an industry, we get attracted to the shiny thing, right? The thing du jour. And sometimes we don't think about how the past should affect our current actions, right? We play 5-year-old soccer a lot. Here's this thing, here's what I need to be concerned about because it's the thing that's in the press right now, whatever. We don't think about how that thing will evolve in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years and how we should think about protecting it, defending it, attacking it, whatever it is we're trying to do. And it turns out the concept of even skating to where the puck is gonna be is actually the understanding of a highly complex system, right? It's not just Newtonian physics, right? Hockey is at its core Newtonian physics, right? F equals ma, body in motion tends to stay in motion, all that kind of horse shit. If you hit it with a stick, the puck goes somewhere. So anyone who knows trig should be a hockey expert, right? Nope. Anyone who knows networking and systems should be a cybersecurity expert, right? Nope, that's not how this works, right? These are complex systems with other actors in play who are trying to do things, and you have to understand the interplay of that complex system. Now, history can be a guide. Why do sports teams watch tapes? Because not only do they look at themselves and how they act, they look at their teammates, they look at the other teams, they get smart, they understand their strengths and weaknesses, and they study and they prepare, except unless you're the Colorado Rockies, and then you don't. Any baseball fans? No? Colorado Rockies are on track to have the absolute worst team in baseball in the history of baseball since the dead ball era, which is like gold star work. It's hard to be that bad, so maybe they're actually trying. It's like a, what's the movie? Oh, shit, Major League. You know, they're just trying really hard. No one's a baseball fan, so I'm just gonna keep going. Okay. For me, when I started my career, and I was up north, I was super ambitious, trying to learn everything I could. I was also kind of a dick and really overconfident, right? Which is, I guess, like this is 20-year-old life, right? I'm overconfident, I'm kind of an asshole, I'm a tech dude, I think I know what I'm doing. One of the things I really wanted to do was write a book, right? So again, for those of you, and I'm not saying this as a poke, but for the older generation, early days of the internet, sharing information like this was not easy, right? There were very few events that you could go to. There was DEF CON, OG Hope Days, and that kind of thing. But cybersecurity knowledge was hard to come by. And oftentimes the best source of knowledge was in book form. Books are the things that are made of paper that are bound together that you can read. At stores that used to exist like Borders, you could buy them. It's much less common today, but at the time, it was a big deal. And so I decided I really want to write a book. I got into Wi-Fi security. We were tearing apart the protocol, doing all kinds of wacky development against breaking into wireless networks and that kind of thing. And I thought, I'm going to write a book on 802.11 security. So I sent a proposal off to O'Reilly, because at the time, O'Reilly was like the king, the champion of all technical publishing, right? Everybody wanted to have an animal book, you want to have your name on the animal book and the whole deal. And so I ended up proposing to O'Reilly. They have a page on the website, so you want to write a book? I'm like, that's me. I download it, I fill out the form, I send it into O'Reilly. I figure there's going to be this big back and forth. Like 3 days later, they're like, congratulations, you're going to be an author, here's your contract, or whatever. I was like, holy shit, this is super cool. So I start writing a book. I realize that's the worst thing in the world. No one should write books. It is a lot of effort, right? A, tons of effort. B, it is not going to make you rich. In fact, it should be illegal how little money you make, right? There should at least be a clause that says, no matter how bad this goes, you will make minimum wage. Oh no. You're making cents on the hour to do this nonsense. And so I ended up actually needing some help because I really got a little distraught about how much energy it was, and I brought a friend Bob in, and he helped me finish it. We wrote the book, not that Bob, a different Bob. There are other people in the world named Bob, just so you know, Bob. And we wrote the book. And so now we're published authors, right? Which is really cool. So then we get then you're kind of, especially at the time in O'Reilly, because they were like the preeminent tech publisher, there was really like almost a cult of like, oh, you're an O'Reilly author too, right? And it was a big deal to be an O'Reilly author. And so O'Reilly is based in Sebastopol, California, and they decided they were going to start having these camps. And what they were going to do is bring all the O'Reilly authors together and basically have a camp out at the O'Reilly headquarters. And so they get a bunch of 20 and 30-year-old tech nerds together and tell them, like, it's going to be a camp out. It is the craziest, like, half the people have never slept not on a bed in their life. And so at some point they had to open up the building just so people could sleep inside of it because people didn't bring tents. They had brought like a throw blanket to sleep under or whatever. I ended up passed out like underneath somebody's cubicle, like, they got pictures of their kids and shit, and I'm like, because I also, to be clear, did not bring a tent. Anyway, it was actually a really cool experience. Something happened there that was one of those big moments that in hindsight I should have realized was going to be the truth, and I ignored it. We're sitting around this campfire, and there's a woman there in a bunny suit, like a full-blown bunny costume. That's why. Anyone know what movie this is? Harvey. Excellent. We got some Jimmy Stewart fans in the audience. Good. And some people that are awake, too, so I appreciate that. This woman in the bunny suit is there, and she's a very, like, kind of progressive technology person. I don't remember what book she had written. And she was talking, and this is in 2000, I guess, 2001, somewhere in that 2001 timeframe, about how social media and social networks were going to revolutionize the world. And she was just convinced of this and was talking to everybody about the impact of social media and social networks. First of all, let my kind of bias of like, I think I'm not going to take advice from a person in a bunny costume kick in. That was stupid of me. Also, I kind of poo-pooed it as like, no, the internet and Usenet and things like that are just fine like they are. We'll just continue to use the Usenet for the rest of our lives. And social media won't matter. Well, it turns out social media did indeed change the world, right? And I think even because of like my initial pushback against the words that she said, I didn't really accept it, even in the face of abundant obviousness that social media was actually going to change the world. So that was one of those instances that if I had sat back and reflect and removed my own opinion or my own bias from the situation, I probably would have realized the importance of what she was saying. Oh no, I did not. There's been a whole series of those things in my life that I want to kind of talk through, but for me that one really stands out as like, look, Bruce, get your shit together and listen to the people around you. Anybody know what movie this is from? This is a single screenshot from a movie, but I think you've all seen the movie. Die Hard. You win. I don't have any gift cards to give you. I'm sorry. Yeah, anyway, it's from Die Hard. This is the scene where he's flipping through the bearer bonds, right? How many of you prior to Die Hard had ever heard the term bearer bond? A handful. G-Mark, okay, that's because you were there when Moses put the tablets together, G-Mark. Sorry. Yeah. Anyway, bearer bonds are a bearer asset. What bearer means is if you hold the thing, you've constructed possession and you're the one that owns it, right? Cash is a bearer asset. If you have the cash, it's yours. One of the earliest, the earliest, not the earliest, but one of the most common bearer assets that we think about are precious metals, like gold, right? If you have a gold nugget and you possess it, it is yours. If you pull it out of the ground and you mine it, it is your gold, assuming it wasn't on somebody else's land, and there's a whole bunch of things about that. Gold has driven many interesting historical events, right? The discovery of the New World, things of that nature, and the California Gold Rush of 1948, 49, and that kind of thing, right? Now think about it. we live in a time, especially if you live in the East Coast, like land use rights and things like that are pretty different than they are out west, especially out west 150 years ago, right? There's a whole bunch of land nobody owned. There's a whole bunch of land you can just go and stake a claim and whatever. They found gold in the hills of California in 1848, and people just started going west, right? There's literally money in the ground that if you can dig up, it is yours to keep, right? That's pretty motivational today, let alone almost 200 years ago, right? When you could just like put your shit on a horse, go west, walk into a creek and be like, oh, gold, I own this, cool. Well, there's downstream effects for that, right? Bearer assets like that require energy, especially precious metals to mine. The people that sell things to the miners are oftentimes the ones getting rich, right? This is not surprising. Not all the miners find gold, right? There's not signs that pop up out of the ground that like, yay, verily, here's some fucking gold, right? You have to figure it out. And even with modern technology, it doesn't work like that. I am, to be super clear, a gigantic Gold Rush nerd on the History Channel. Like, I will watch Gold Rush until I pass out from exhaustion and the lack of eating. It's not like, I remember the old internet cafes where people would play Stargate until they died. I will watch Gold Rush until I die. Like periodically someone needs to shove food in my face when the new season comes out. So I like Gold Rush. Anyway, no other Gold Rush nerds? Excellent, that worked out great. When they would go out there, like they need housing, they need tooling, they need somebody to sell the gold to, they need all this stuff. So all these towns popped up, and the real rush, quote unquote, was actually the people, right? The gold itself contributed to the economy, but the actual material contribution to the economy was the mass movement of people to the west, not just to look for gold, but to support the people looking for gold. That was the actual impact of the gold rush. That's why San Francisco exists today, right? You can blame everything about Silicon Valley on the gold rush of 1848, right? Period. There's a connective tissue, and it is direct between those two events. The other thing that followed, funnily, was crime, right? Why? Well, you possess the gold now you don't, it's mine, right? Like, it really incentivizes bad activity, right? Anything that you possess in quantity that is a bearer asset, someone else is going to want to take from you, right? People rob people for cash, right? People went out west, shot people for their gold, right? If you struck it rich and you found a bunch of gold, you didn't jump up and down and freak out about it. You were as chill as humanly possible until you could hire your own army, right? That was kind of the goal. Survive long enough to get people to protect you to get more money out the ground because someone is going to want to steal your shit. So that was the premise of the first Die Hard, right? There's a bunch of bearer bonds there. If you possess the bearer bonds, they're yours. Now, I would argue bearer bonds probably have a serial number. You can track their lineage. Gold, you can, right? Gold is gold is gold, and you can launder it and make it make sense. And then we invented crypto. So crypto is a bearer asset. And again, I've struggled a lot with cryptocurrency, and its ilk because of my background and how I came into that arena. In the late 1900s, which is just a crazy fucking thing to say, in the late 1900s, as if it was like an eternity ago. In the late 1900s, there was a push around digital bearer assets as a concept, way before Bitcoin, way before Ethereum and all these kind of things. E-gold and Chaumian ability to like do proofs around all the kind of things that we take for granted around cryptocurrency were being toyed with in 98, 99, 2000 kind of time frame. I ended up, so I started the Shmoo Group in Anchorage, or I guess in Anchorage, in like 95, 96. And there was a bunch of us that got together up there, and some of them got into some of the early days of digital bearer assets. And I ended up getting introduced to this guy, Robert Hedinga. Bob ran, another person named Bob, just so we know, there's yet another Bob in the story. Bob ran this thing called the Digital Commerce Society of Boston. Bob was actually from Anchorage, moved to Massachusetts, got married to a Harvard grad. And so by extension, he had access to the Harvard Club in Boston, and he would hold these meetings. And what it was all about is trying to revolutionize commerce through the use of bearer assets. And so Bob's thesis was like, look, with these technologies, and remember, this is 1998, with these technologies, we can revolutionize digital commerce by taking out the middleman, right? So if you look at the extent, the universe of financial transactions, most of them are what's known as book entry settlement. Okay, there is a book that someone maintains, a middleman, that says like, you bought a thing, you provided capital, I make a record of it, and we swap, right? And there's lots of ways that book entry settlement can happen, but in general, huge amounts of the financial industry are the middlemen making the thing happen. I was a CISO at a prime broker, right? The prime broker is the broker behind the broker dealers that you deal with when you do equities trades and that kind of thing. The broker dealer is a middleman. The prime broker is a middleman. The market is a middleman, right? That entire universe of Wall Street, the people that make the money are the middlemen, right? There are other people, but the middlemen are the people selling the tools to the miners. They're selling the infrastructure, providing the capability. And so Bob's idea was like, we can wipe out the middleman, right? If we all went to digital bearer assets, the ability to, I have a thing, a string of ones and zeros that mean specifically I possess the money. It doesn't point to the money somewhere. It's not a bank account or something like that. That thing is the money. And then I can give you some of those ones and zeros, and now you have the money, and no one else was involved. 1998, right? This is an idea that clearly came into vogue around 2010, 2011 with Bitcoin, but had been played with a lot in the past. My early days problem with Bitcoin is it was a shitty implementation of those concepts that we'd been playing around with 15 years prior, right? And so I thought, there's no way on God's goddamn earth that any of this is gonna work because it sucks, right? I had been around, I'd talked to people that build these systems, I'm like, this is just a tinker toy bullshit way to burn coal, let's not do this one. And we did this one, and it worked. Should have learned from that. I should have realized my own bias and recognized that Bitcoin was a thing. Yeah, they are big. I'm admitting my fault. I still am very anti-cryptocurrency. The one thing it does that gold did is it makes crime be a thing that people want to do, right? And we've seen this, right? How does ransomware get paid? It doesn't get paid in chickens, right? It doesn't get paid in a wire transfer. It gets paid in goddamn Bitcoin. It gets paid in Ethereum, some cryptocurrency of your choice. Why? It's untraceable. It's like gold, right? It totally, it incentivizes crime in all kinds of new ways, and I can't necessarily prove anything went wrong, right? There's no middleman to back me up. The middlemen take a big rake. They take a lot of money out of the system, but they provide a backstop, right? If there's fraud, the middleman will rewind it. Nope, that's not a thing. That's not how this is gonna go down, right? I have a bank, I have a backstop, I have that kind of thing. If I give you $2,000 cash for a bicycle, I take the bicycle home and the bicycle falls apart, what's my recourse? If I can't find that person again or whatever, I'm shit out of $2,000 and I have some scrap metal, right? That's what digital bearer asset transactions facilitate. It's on the two parties to have assurance in what's going on. Most humans aren't capable of that level of assurance, right? We also have now in a situation where, we're at the kind of farther end of the gold rush, and I'm sure you've all seen the stories. People are getting kidnapped and fingers cut off, and they're getting relatives kidnapped for their cryptocurrency. Who could have foresaw this, right? Every dead gold miner that got killed in their own mine in 1848 is like, I could have, I saw it, yeah, you dipshits, like this was clearly gonna be a thing. And now that you have airplanes, whatever those are, people can go all over the world and kill each other for their digital asset. Wow, surprise. This trend will continue, right? This currency is not going away. Ergo, we will continue to see crime facilitated on behalf of and because of cryptocurrencies. What are we going to do about it? I don't know. One of the things that, we talk about in security, like compensating controls. What do you put in place to make up for this? What do we put up in place for gold miners getting shot in their own mine? Stake claims, right? You can define, this is my land. We put in laws about that. There's legal, sheriffs and whole law enforcement apparatus that spun up trying to protect people from this. I mean, Wild West movies are movies, they're made up, but a lot of it really was just like, seat your pants, man, I hope law enforcement gets here before I get killed kind of thing. And we ramped up law enforcement, we ramped up all kinds of compensating controls. We're trying to ramp up compensating controls in cryptocurrency, have not been doing a great job at it. And I would offer, some of us were talking about this at the bar last night, and I'm gonna take a hard detour here. I've been involved in the battles of policy setting in the US for a while, where I'm mostly just an observer. And it kind of came to a head in 2016. I was the tech advisor to the Obama Commission on Enhancing National Cybersecurity. And I spent a year running around with the commissioners, listening to public testimony, talking with people behind the scenes, trying to understand how we could make cybersecurity better for the nation, for the world, and that kind of thing. And one of the things that was striking then, and is still striking now, is the complete lack of a backstop for private actors in the face of cybercrime, right? If I'm a small business owner, I own a liquor store, and someone throws a brick through my window, I can call the cops. Cops will show up, I can hand them footage, they'll investigate, they'll try to find the person. It's not only their remit, but their skill set, right? This is what they're trained to do. They also don't say, you probably should have had better glass, or maybe stop selling things that are so valuable, like liquor's too valuable, stop selling it, sell something else, right? No, the law enforcement is there as a backstop. There's all kinds of capability to try to help me with that, right? If someone were to, I don't know, bomb a petroleum plant in Texas, if a nation actor from another nation bombed a petroleum plant, or let's say bombed a hospital and shut it down, what would we as a country do? We would respond kinetically, right? The intelligence community, the DOD, the federal government, state governments would get involved. It would be a goddamn war. What happens when a ransomware actor shuts down a hospital system? Fire the fucking CISO. That's the thing. That's the right thing to have done, right? Like, it is absolutely mind-boggling how diametrically opposed those two situations are, right? It's the same basic outcome. People die in ransomware attacks in healthcare systems. Full stop. What do we do about it? We sit in these rooms and we laugh like, oh, they should have had better care, they should have better security. No, fuck them up. I mean, sorry, I'm a little hot. I can't understand, and again, this is one of those learning experiences. Like 10 years ago, I sat in a room with a bunch of really smart people, we were talking about this, I'm like, at some point in my lifetime, the federal government will do something productive about this. No, what's the federal government doing? Don't pay the ransom. That's the guys, if you pay the ransom, you're gonna get in trouble now. Get bent, right? I gotta look out for myself, I gotta look out for my patients, I gotta look out for the people that I support in my community, the people that have jobs here. You're gonna tell me that I can't make my own investment? It's an investment to pay a ransom, right? It's a decision. I can't go to Indonesia and go get people and fix this. I'm just gonna go, not to pick on Indonesia, but there's a lot of organized crime in Indonesia, Eastern Europe, all that, right? We choose as a country not to do it. It's hard, I get it. It's not my job, I'm not in the federal government. Somebody should have done it. 10 years hence, nothing has changed. I'm surprised. Who could foresee that? Everybody else who dealt with federal policy in the last 150 years, like, no shit, of course the federal government's not gonna do the hard thing, they'll do the easy thing, okay? This is a situation where, like, this will continue to happen, people will continue to get kidnapped, ransomware will continue to happen, and the fix isn't inside the financial system, it's through the backstop that should exist in society. That's not what's occurring today. All right, I'm gonna shift gears, slightly less emotional, we're gonna talk about the DoD. So, anyway, what's this? The Orange Book, it's actually the book named by the color that it is, part of the Rainbow series. The Rainbow series was a series of books that DoD published in an attempt to get a handle on all things cybersecurity related-ish, before we called it cybersecurity. This particular book contained system evaluation criteria to determine how secure systems were based on a whole set of evaluation criteria. There were 4 levels. A and B had mandatory access control, meaning that everything that was inside the system had to have strict access control that was controlled by administrators. There was no ifs, ands, or buts. It was mandatory. A was provable, mathematically provable security, which I will say is a horse's butt and really goddamn hard. In the 70s and 80s, when they wrote this thing, it seemed like a thing that might happen because a computer chip could be laid out on a table and you could understand it. Ha ha ha, we're way past that, right? Modern computer chips alone have their own operating systems, right? They have their own code that they run before they run the code that you want them to run. They're little computers inside your computers. There's so many layers of computers, it's turtles all the way down in your goddamn PC, right? There's so much software that you don't see, it is mind-blowing. The people that wrote the Orange Book could not conceive of a situation where that would be a thing. So like mathematical provable security, not a thing. Anyway. B is basically the same thing without the provability, but still lots of mandatory access control. C and D is discretionary access control, where D was like, you tried. Like, good job. Like, you said the word security once, good enough. And it's actually, I think, like labeled like no security in there. But this was an attempt, right? It was an attempt to say, like, if I can define these criteria to evaluate a system, I can determine how secure it is, and therefore you can build the systems that you need to build the networks, the infrastructure with the assurance that you expect. Great idea in concept. In practice, what happens is that technology was running faster than you could possibly evaluate these systems, right? Systems got more complex, and we thought, like, how do we deal with this? Well, then we'll just come up with like kind of more criteria in which to measure and assess things. So the common criteria was created in 2005 as a way to basically have vendors be able to express, this is what I expect my system to do from a security perspective, someone to evaluate that and say, yay, verily, it does this thing, and then get approved for use in federal space and by extension in the private sector to be able to buoy the security of the programs, the systems that we use. Common criteria suffered the same fate that the trust evaluation criteria did as well. Systems continued to evolve. Around 2005, we started to get things like automated patching, right? Which I would argue was a good thing. I used to work at a company called Cigital, and we did software security work and evaluation and that kind of thing. And one of the things that we evaluated was, I think it was McAfee, and their first automatic push of virus definitions. And it was actually controversial. This is the early 2000s. It was controversial because they were like, you're gonna push a thing over the internet to a piece of software that's going to ingest it and act upon it, and you claim it improves the security of that thing, right? Bold move, let's see where this goes, Cotton. Like, it really was a big deal. And they were really freaked out because they're like, we're gonna try to push virus definitions. We don't want viruses to go with it. We don't want to open up ports that people can use to pop our software to get infrastructure. So we evaluated that. That was an example of like automated patching taking hold, where the common criteria and the trusted evaluation criteria were designed to be like, here's a point in time snapshot of a thing. Can you go tell me if it's any good, right? That is not a fast process. By the time that process has been run, we're 4 or 5 versions ahead of it. There's some security patches that happen. Oh, and there's new features that the customer wants. So I actually don't want that version that's been evaluated. I want that version that's been evaluated. Wash, rinse, repeat, right? Then the cloud came along, right? The software isn't yours, runs on somebody else's computer. You can't evaluate it, right? I can't go to Salesforce and say, hey, I'm looking to use Salesforce. Can you just give me your code? I'm gonna take a look at it, and I'll let you know if I wanna buy your software. No, right? A, no one's capable of looking at that code, period. B, there's no way in hell they're giving you that code. C, the code will be different, well, now, right? Salesforce constantly pushes code, modern software systems constantly push code. These are not things that we are capable of evaluating in a static sense. I can hand you a static artifact and say, tell me how good or bad this thing is. Nope, not a thing. So what have we done? What's this? Pen testing, ha 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 ha. This is the biggest joke in the whole night. Okay, good. Yeah, thanks. Right, anyway. So when I was hired at Cigital, they used to be called Reliable Software Technologies. And what that was a line of business designed to assess the reliability of a product. They would test it, they would do formal analysis of it, they would determine how it breaks, when it breaks, and whatever. What was fascinating about RST/Cigital's view of the world is they viewed security as a subset of reliability and treated it as a discipline, right? And so we built systems to test systems in the face of the ever-changing dynamic of how the systems are developed and patched and that kind of thing. Like I built a smart card analysis lab for Visa and MasterCard where we tested Java card global platform cards, and we had this whole criteria where we actually read the standard that the card was supposed to be developed against, looked at places where there were likely to be weaknesses, and then wrote tests to validate whether or not those areas were implemented correctly. And then we worked with our reliability counterparts to validate coverage, to look at the entire system, and then run these tests and wash, rinse, and repeat and iterate. It wasn't about finding a break in a card. It was about finding all the breaks in the card. It was about having coverage. And a smart card's a small system, I'll admit. But what was fascinating about that, it was a discipline. Right? So we applied a very structured process to try to find these weaknesses in these systems. And arguably what we did is couched as pen testing, right? It's active online assessment of a thing, right? Because we were also hitting the card terminals, we're hitting the back-end systems and all that kind of stuff. And we treat modern day pen testing with oftentimes, I don't mean to throw the whole industry under the bus, oftentimes as not a discipline, but a check mark, and also as if I got in, I was successful, right? When I'm a buyer of a test, I'm way more interested in the breadth. Do everything. Show me my whole surface. Don't just show me the one route that gets down through it. It's expensive to do that, though, right? And so what we've done is we've levied requirements on companies like you have to have a pen test. You know, in order for me to do business with you, you have to have a pen test. Like, that's cool, but I'm already paying for this audit that does all this other stuff, so I'm gonna take, like, let's say, does $2,000 seem like the right amount for a pen test? Cool, thanks. I mean, you mean a vulnerability scan, right? That's what you got, and even the shitty one for $2,000. So we have come to a point where systems are highly dynamic. We have more counterparties than we've ever had. You know, every modern organization might have 100, 200, 300, 400 SaaS products, and we need to find a way to balance the risk with that. I can't possibly evaluate. I can't pay smart people to look at the static artifacts of these systems. I can't pay smart people to do dynamic analysis of these systems. So I'm just gonna ask nicely, hey, are you not a clown show when it comes to security? And if they say yes, awesome, I can use you. And I say this a little tongue-in-cheek. I'm a CISO. I've owned third-party risk numerous times in my life. What we've done is we've come to a consensus. For right or wrong, things like the SOC 2 are industry standard, right? You have to have a SOC 2 to play ball. You have to have a SOC 2 to participate with other companies in the ecosystem, right? To sell to them and that kind of thing. And the SOC 2 has its advantages. Like, I mean, it does have coverage, right? It covers a lot of ground. But man, you can get a lot of weird shit through a SOC 2, right? Do you always read the SOC 2 reports you get? Yes, no? If there's a finding, do you not buy the product? You know, if the customer really wants it, you're still gonna buy the thing, right? The SOC 2, one of the things in there is basically testing. You have to test, so I have to buy a pen test. I have to do these things. It's remarkable how diluted the idea of dynamic testing of a system has gotten in the last 30 years from like, highly targeted, really paying attention to the coverage to like, here's a report from some guy in, Eastern Europe that ran a vuln scanner and I'm calling it a pen test. That doesn't actually increase the value and the security of the system. I think what I struggle with there is that I don't see a clear path out of that. We are not necessarily building more secure systems, because I think a compensating control here is like, don't arm developers and companies to make bad decisions to do stupid shit. But we do it every day, right? You can deploy terrible systems all the time, and we see it. Are they incentivized to not do it? No. If you're a startup and you got to make money, like, you're running at profitability as fast as you can. Free market, baby. If you're a big company and you're locked in, people can't get rid of you, you're going to spend the right amount of money on security, right? Where do we see the highest levels of security in the US in the private sector? Anyone? Banking, finance. Why? It's where the money is, right? Huge amounts of regulatory pressure on the money cause people with money to have to be good stewards of the money, and by extension that means security, right? Outside of that, there's no regulation. I'm not saying regulation is the answer, because it oftentimes is the opposite of an answer. However, I will say that one of the benefits of the regulation on the banking sector has been banks are pretty goddamn good at security, right? They got their shit together. They also, conveniently, have the money to have their shit together, right? If I'm a small business, is there a grant for me to get my SOC 2? Nope. Would that be super cool? Oh yeah, right? If I was a startup and the state said, I'll give you 100 grand for your SOC 2 because it's good for business, it's good for the state, and it's good for employment in this state, that would be awesome. Has any state done that? Nope. Should you elect me a governor of Maryland? Yes, you should. I'm proud to announce my candidacy for 2028. No, just kidding. One more thing, and then I'm gonna get kicked off stage. So I'm gonna talk about AI now. So we are in the third wave of AI. I don't know if people realize that. There might be four, depends on how you couch it. But I count it as three. The first stage of AI, 50s, 60s, 70s, was around symbolic computing. Maxima was a symbolic computing platform. The initial idea with AI, if you read some of the initial literature, was we need to make computers think like humans. How do humans think? Symbolically. We think in abstract concepts, and we use those concepts to create more concepts, to derive opinions, to be functional members of society. And so if we just treat computers to think, or teach computers to think symbolically, computers will think like humans, and ergo, we'll have artificially intelligent computers. So we spent a lot of time in the 50s and 60s thinking about AI and doing this kind of thing. And there's an interesting tale associated with it, like Lisp and Prolog and languages like that were designed to support symbolic computing. There are symbolic computing hardware platforms that exist, and I would even say like the VAX platform and its insanely diverse instruction set was an outgrowth of symbolic computing's history in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, right? For those that don't know what a VAX is, it's a computer, and it was designed, I think, by the Digital Equipment Corporation, aka Digital, or DEC, and they had a very, very, very wide instruction set, very abstract, almost a programming language at the assembly language level, versus like a RISC chip, a PowerPC or something like that, which had basically like math, and that was all it could do. And VAX systems even went so far as to break out those instruction sets on the different die, so different actual CPUs handled different instruction sets at the assembly level. It was a fascinating architecture, died a horrible death, but it was pretty cool. Anyway, didn't work. Right? The grand idea of getting computers to think like humans in that time didn't really pan out. And so the second wave hit. This is my piece de resistance of art. It is a tractor at a tractor pull with IBM's Deep Blue as a smokestack on it. It'll make sense in a second. Also, it's risen. It used to be attached, so actually I screwed this up pretty bad. Anyway, it was pretty funny in my head. So in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, we realized like, it's pretty hard to do symbolic computing, it's not really paying off, but you know what happened? Moore's Law, baby! We can make fast computers. So we did, right? IBM Deep Blue famously battled Garry Kasparov in chess. He was the world grand champion and whatever, and IBM just made a computer that thought really fast, right? It just thought about the state of the chessboard and just thought about it, and eventually looked back and was like, let's do that move, and went back and did it. And then Gary would do his thing and like boom, 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 and eventually Deep Blue won, right? The second wave of AI was horsepower. Just put energy into this thing and think a lot. And then that'll basically pretend to think like a human, right? Because we don't think a lot. We're just kind of on autopilot. The computer will think a lot, though, and it looks about the same as a human on autopilot. So anyway, this is horsepower, IBM, Deep Blue. Okay, yeah, that's a good joke. Anyway, so then, welcome to the third wave, right? We took all the best of both, symbolic computing plus super amounts of horsepower, right? Because the little thing in your pocket right now is more powerful than Deep Blue ever was, right? This can play chess faster than Deep Blue did. It's nuts. So I contend the thing that set this wave apart is accessibility, right? Interacting with Deep Blue is not a simple thing. You couldn't just roll up to like deepblue.ibm.com, I would like to play a game of thermonuclear warfare, and it would play with you. War games, it's really, guys. Yeah, thank you. The jokes will catch up with you eventually. Like tomorrow, I'll be like, oh, that one was really funny. But accessibility, like anybody on the planet can go to ChatGPT and be like, draw me some hands, and it'll draw you some hands. And we think, wow, that's not a hand, right? That's just not a thing. I actually saw something that was, I think, a really useful framing for me today was not that sometimes AIs hallucinate, is that they're always hallucinating. It's just sometimes they're getting it what we consider right, and we accept the answer, right? Everything they do, they're just doing. They don't know right from wrong. It's a goddamn computer model. It's not sentient compared to the guy from Microsoft who thought it was. This is literally just a computer doing stuff that periodically us as humans accept the output and say, that was a good one, magic box, gold star, do it again, right? Prompt engineering is just asking the magic box a question and hoping the magic box does the thing correctly. And if it doesn't, I'm a bad prompt engineer. And if it does, I'm a good prompt engineer. No, it's just a magic box doing magic things. Coincidentally, you got the result you wanted, gold star, right? And you look at this, you're like, I can tell AI. It uses M dashes, and it uses the word delve, and it's got 6 fingers and shit like that, right? Well, except like all technology, it moves forward, it gets better, it will continue to improve. We are at a stage due to the accessibility and the symbolic computing and the velocity that we have, innovation is wacky fast right now. There will be murders, there will be wars, there will be bad outcomes that happen because of artificially generated videos, images, text, people. How do you distinguish that, right? We think we can do it today, tomorrow. Again, let's learn from the past. We will not be able to distinguish, period. There will be no ability to do that. How does this not start a war in a few years? I don't know. I legit don't know. I'm quite concerned about this. Our compensating control right now is let's pen test the LLMs, right? Let's ask the magic box difficult questions and see if it gives us things it's not supposed to give us, like how to make bombs and child porn and things like that. Oh, your magic box did a bad thing. Redo your magic box and pay me to pen test it again, okay? Well, you think about the evolution of software, you know, and at least that requires a human to evolve, right? These systems right now are evolving themselves as they continue to learn. There's no way to stay in front of that. I can't possibly do a point-in-time assessment of one of these models and have it mean a goddamn thing, right? So what do? Well, we try to build AI-resilient systems. Kids are cheating and using AI to do their homework, to take tests. What are we doing now? Handing them paper to fill out. Wow. Now, I appreciate this is AI resistant, right? Now, barring like an earpiece or something you have in your ear, it's going to be very difficult for people to game this. It is also a massive step backwards, right? If I'm a student, this isn't how I work. It was one thing when I was in college to take a Blue Book test because most of my homework was still handwritten, right? Everything I did was at the speed of my hand, and you could probably read my handwriting, right? If I had to take a Blue Book test right now, it would just be lines, right? Because I forgot how to write, because I don't write anymore. I used to have a client at a hedge fund I worked at, and when he would get up to the whiteboard, and he would talk and he would write. But what he was actually doing was just moving his hands to think.
he wasn't actually writing letters. And I remember, like, I brought another guy with me on a gig once, and he's like, I can't read what he's writing. I'm like, oh, he's just thinking. He's like, what? I'm like, he's just scribbling while he thinks. Like, there's literally, Pat, does that say anything? No, it doesn't say anything. I'm just scribbling. Okay, cool. I'm like, that's awesome. That would be me with the blue book right now. I would just be like, this is my answer. It's a sine wave. So our compensating control right now is to be like, screw all of that, write it down on paper, because you can't cheat on paper. It's not really a solution, right? I get it. It's a stopgap. But we have to find a better way to deal with this. If we're worried about the impact of AI in education, this is maybe how we handle it today, shouldn't be how we handle it in the future. If we're worried about AI and not starting thermonuclear war, we have a bit of a different situation on our hands. So again, we need to learn from the past and realize just because it's funny it makes 6 fingers and we think we can see it today, in 5 years, we will not be able to discern the difference. And we need to build systems that are resilient to that and think about how to deal with that now. So really quick, I'm going to go through, I kind of crowdsourced this because I didn't know what I was going to talk about. I lied seriously when I wrote this, is that I'm finishing up my keynote for RVAsec, and by that I mean I had opened up the slide and had my name on it and asked people for input of what to say. There's some interesting stuff. I'm going to click through a couple of them really quickly. This one, again, I kind of touched on this. Turns out in hindsight, expecting the federal government to increase engagement was folly on my behalf. Also, something that's striking to me is that no entity in the federal government has the remit to protect the population writ large when it comes to cyber issues, right? NSA protects classified information systems. NIST sets standards but doesn't operationalize them and doesn't create policy. CISA has infrastructure, critical infrastructure in its name. Who protects us, right, at home when you're hanging out and or you work at a company that's not critical infrastructure? Whose remit is it in the federal government to actually create policies, to enact national programs that protect us? Turns out, not a goddamn person. There are people in the government that want to do that, and I've been around them, and I've watched them try, I've watched them push product out the front door, I've watched them try to do the right thing. Agencies don't have the responsibility, the funding, the responsibility to do it, and even if it gets traction, invariably when that person leaves that job, that activity dies and it goes away. Have you heard of CVE? Right? Why does MITRE have CVE? Because some agency thinks it's a good idea and gives MITRE money to do it. What happens when that money goes away? CVE could die. Do we care about that? Probably a little bit. You can throw stones to CVE, God knows I have. Better than nothing. Literally nothing. No one in the federal government has the remit to do CVE, period. They do it out of the goodness of their heart because it seems like a thing to do, probably to protect critical infrastructure. I think that's bullshit, right? I think we need to change how we think about, again, the backstop for the population writ large. The banks got their shit together. Critical infrastructure's got their shit together. Could they be better? Yes. Do we all need help as individual citizens, as a society? Yes. Is it happening today? Not really. No, I don't want to talk about that one. This is the last one, and then I'll wrap. This is really fascinating to me. So, for so long we wanted to get people to do MFA, and we're like, how do you make MFA easier? And so we came up with MFA push, right? You don't actually have to open the app and type a code in. It'll just pop up a thing on your phone and be like, oh, do you want to authenticate? Yes, that's the second factor. It was a great idea. Made it easier. A lot of us use it to help adoption of MFA in our companies, and it led to some ginormous breaches, right? Why? When the attacker has the password, and they just fucking keep hitting that button, and the user's like, God damn, this thing keeps asking me to authenticate. Oh, I guess whatever, I'll get it to shut up and hit yes. Oh, it was quiet now. Awesome. I don't get the warning. Meanwhile, their account is popped, it's being run right in through that network, right? Could we have foreseen this? Yes. How? Because people get annoyed, right? Who could predict that humans don't like seeing the same thing happen over and over and over and over again? So this is definitely one, as soon as it started happening and I turned this off, I'm like, I never should have turned it on. I knew I should not have enabled MFA push, but it took it a glaring, breach for it to happen to become aware. Again, past me, a little upset at current me. Anyway, with that, I've had my time, and I appreciate y'all listening to me rant and swear and whatever. If you want to get in contact with me, this is how you can find me. I'm not going to take questions because there's nothing questionable here. It was all true. But I do appreciate your time. Thanks very much for having me, Jake and crew.